Director of Advance at UNM. And before we get started, we are recording this session, and we will be posting it on the Advance website on our and on our YouTube channel. We have 4 thoughtful, accomplished faculty colleagues to hear from today. We've got a series of questions that they're going to answer. They've each identified several they're going to answer. And then we'll have time at the end for questions. So we're going to take about an hour to hear from them on various topics related to managing your time and protecting or creating time for your research, scholarship, or creative works. And then we're going to hope to have about half an hour for questions and discussion and follow-up. This is a joint effort of Advance and the Faculty Research Development Office. I would like to note we've just added a webinar on June 2nd that is essentially about how to talk to your program manager, and we may be adding a few other things as once we think through what the ever-shifting sands of research and scholarship look like right now. So we're going to start with a sort of lightning round of introductions. Melanie, if you don't mind, why don't you start us? Quick introduction, please.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Melanie Moses, a professor in computer science, and I'm currently serving as an advisor to the VPR on artificial intelligence. My research areas are computational biology and bio-inspired computation. So I like to build models of complex biological things like ant colonies and immune systems, and take the lessons from that to build swarms of robots that explore the world. Most fun exploring volcanic eruptions. But I also do some research in AI, which has recently taken over my life. And so I believe I am on this panel to talk about how AI has taken over my life. Pass it on.
Thanks, Myrriah.
Hi, hi everybody. I'm Myrriah Gomez. I'm an associate professor in the Honors College, and I'm currently the interim director of the Southwest Hispanic Research Institute. I'm also the Melanie Moses undergraduate fellowship coordinator, so I help undergraduate students think through how to put together research projects. They all have individual mentors, and I'm sort of the backup mentor, I guess. And my area of research is mostly thinking and looking at the effects of nuclear industries on communities of color, especially Latinx communities and New Mexican critical regional studies. And I think I'm on this committee because I often tell Julia how I don't sleep at night because I'm up working, and yeah, I've had to be really creative of coming up with ways to block time because of so many different obligations, but hopefully some of that will be helpful.
Thank you. Tom.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tom Turner. I'm a professor in the biology department here at UNM, and I started my academic career here, and I've been here the whole time with a little couple of sojourns at some other places. But I am also the curator of fishes in the Museum of Southwestern Biology, which is you may or may not know, we have a wonderful natural history museum here, and it serves a research community. I'm an environmental biologist, so I work on the intersection of sort of disturbance and change and how that impacts organisms and what we can do to mitigate undesirable changes. Like right now, my favorite project is we're dealing with working with a bunch of people to try to understand how we can deliver water to the Rio Grande in a way that kind of recaptures or sort of holds on to some of the ecosystem processes we'd like to see there, and hold our bosque together. I think I'm on the panel because I've had many roles in administration at UNM. I've kind of come in and out of administration, and it's kind of interesting to kind of drift into and then drift out of administration. It has its own challenges. So hopefully I can provide a little insight on that. But I'm constantly learning. My career is is long. And so I've had several phases, and, from the startup, trying to figure things out, raising a young family, to being an older guy who's trying to figure it out. So thanks for having me.
Thanks. Myrriah.
Hi, I'm Myrriah Lane. I'm the Dean of Graduate Studies and also a professor of geography and environmental studies. I've been here at UNM since 2006, and my research is focused in historical geography, mainly looking at environmental knowledge and environmental policy and how we create that in different times and places. And I think I'm on this panel, Julia, you can tell me, but because I'm like devastatingly organized, and I also have a superhuman ability to compartmentalize.
Exactly. I guarantee you're going to hear some commonalities and some very different approaches to getting things done in the panel. Yes, and Melanie has already said, okay, Myrriah, teach me. So yeah. So the first question, and we're going to hear from Myrriah and Myrriah on this. How do you shape your digital workspace and planning routines to be more intentional about your time versus reacting to requests? And as part of that, what have you found to be pros and cons about being transparent or not about any aspect of your schedule or calendar? And let's start with the devastatingly organized Myrriah.
I only say it because it's true. It's not like
It is true.
something that like I'm like good at. I just happen to be organized. But all right, in terms of yeah, how I do planning routines and digital workspace, I do use calendar blocking probably as my most effective practice, just because I'm in an administrative role now. I'm scheduled 8 to 5, often into the evening, so I absolutely must protect my time. But I have always had a practice, even before being in administration, of trying to block time for deep work. I read that book by Cal, whatever his name is, about deep work. And I tried to really respect the fact that like sometimes you can be running around just putting out fires and doing little things and answering all the emails, but you can't always be doing that. And you have to have times where you tell yourself it's time to focus. And so I like to block my time during the day. I always have a 2-hour block every single day. That's like, this is my time for priority tasks. Sometimes that gets encroached upon, but I'm pretty committed to it. It is always on my calendar, whether I crap on it or not. And now I have somebody who keeps my calendar for me, and which is, wonderful. But that person also knows like it's okay to move the work block around, the 2-hour block, but it's not okay to shorten it or to schedule in the middle of it. And so that's probably my biggest thing I do just in terms of my calendar. When I was writing my book, I had a book come out in 2024 on a history of water management in New Mexico. And I really had to focus, and I really was like, I can't be dealing with distractions. I was doing all that work before work started. At 4 a.m, I would have my 2 or 3 hour block, basically between however early I could get up and to when my kids would get up. That was my writing time. And I would close my email. I would turn off the internet to my computer, like literally put my laptop into offline mode. And I would turn off the internet in my house, just so that like if I had like a tick and I like opened my email, like nothing could happen. It was like a triple safe, just trying to commit to that. Like when it's time to think, it's time to think. When it's time to deal with little things, you could do that in 15-minute chunks, and you can do that in 2-hour chunks, but I just try not to sacrifice the bigger chunk. In terms of pros and cons, I guess, the big pro is, especially now when I'm scheduled often, without me being even asked, I just get put into meetings. I I do have that protected time, and it's just like, don't mess with me because this is an important part of how I work. I think the cons for doing that kind of calendar blocking is like, if you're just dragging when you get to that, on Wednesday, whatever, it might be 1 to 3 p.m. If I'm dragging at 1 p.m. on Wednesday, things are not going to work out like I planned, right? I'm not going to get the most out of that 2-hour block. So I still do sometimes have to readjust in the moment, just like anything. But as a practice, I would say that's been really successful for me.
Myrriah.
Similar to Myrriah, I try to do calendar blocks as well. This semester I have one day. It wasn't intentionally set up this way, but it turned into one day a week where I have my archival research blocked on my calendar. And I feel like, the archivist and a grad student that I work with sort of hold me accountable to that. And then I try to write in the afternoons. And at some point this semester, now I have a partner and we try to meet. And if one of us is out of town or something comes up, I still try to get that writing time in that day. But I often find myself doing weird writing blocks like in the middle of the night. And I'm not advocating for, well, middle of the night, whatever that means to people. For me, it's very early in the morning. And Hemingway used to say, write drunk, edit sober, and mine is more like write tired, edit rested. Because I just need that, similar to what Myrriah said about deep work, I need large chunks of time to get stuff done. And I think this is because I'm a very much a big picture thinker. And so working backward from the beginning of the semester, I always try to do a semester plan and think about my big goals for the semester and what I'm trying to accomplish in terms of specifically writing projects or research projects. That way I know if I start veering off course, I can rein myself back in. I'm often doing work that involves other people, and other people can have to hold me accountable because I have my parts on projects, like probably a lot of you do. So I think that semester planning helps me know like what's manageable, or if I'm trying to do too much, the semester planning prevents that. And I also do weekly planning. So I use a lot of analog tools. And one of them is having my 3-month calendar, so quarterly planning. So similar to like the semester planning, I try to think about what I'm going to get done in the quarter. And then on Monday morning, every week, I sit down and map out my week. And this will come up a little bit later in terms of meetings, but I try to think of what I accomplished the previous week, what carried over into this week, what those celebrations are, and what those rewards are going to be. And I was mentored by two really different people in terms of this strategy. One of my PhD mentors tried to instill in us that anytime you get something big done, that you should reward yourself. And then I have another mentor in the last couple years who's really doubled down, because I find that really difficult. And how I've been trying to teach it to students in a similar way is like um, these don't have to be like go out and buy yourself something. I mean, it can be like make an hour for a phone call with a friend, right? So they don't always have to feel so tied to spending or anything like that. Um, in terms of pros and cons, like I think blocking out research time is really, really important. Sometimes, things go awry and something comes up that you have to handle, but you feel like you still need to get those hours logged for the day. It's similar to like having any or other sort of practice, right? So, when I was working on my dissertation, when I left the university to come back to New Mexico to do my field work, and they were like, we don't think this is a good idea. We see this happen all the time. Students don't finish their dissertations. And I was still doing I was a college runner and I was still doing a lot of marathon running at the time. And I wrote it out like a running plan. And that's still kind of how I hold myself accountable for my writing and my reading, right? So if I was supposed to do 2 hours of research today, like sometimes that happens at 2 in the morning. And I recently had a junior colleague be like, Myrriah, that's not okay. I'm like, well, that's the only time I can get it done. She's like, no, it's not. Refigure this. So I think it's good to have people who can hold you accountable for that too.
And I would like to note that the blocking of time That's a meeting with yourself. If someone asks if you're available, no, I got a meeting. So our next question builds on that, and we're going to hear from Melanie and Myrriah. Do you use any project management tools, including informal tools, to help balance your workload across various positions and your personal life? And, do you use AI? Why or why not? And we're going to start with Melanie.
Okay, so I will say yes, I use AI, as I said, all the time, every day, multiple threads sort of going at once these days. For project management, and time management, I have never found a real tool that I liked. I've tried a million tools. I'd love to hear other people's opinions on this. I basically, keep to-do lists and done lists. I always keep a done list, one, to make sure that I don't redo a thing I did because I can't remember that I did it. And two, so I can look back at the end of the semester and say, oh, look, I have 75 pages of things that I did. That's sometimes inspiring and sometimes overwhelming. I do pull out a piece of paper and a pencil, ideally Sunday night or Monday morning, and write down on a piece of paper, like what my actual priorities are for the list, for the week. Because still things on a screen don't have as much meaning as things I've handwritten. And that kind of helps me keep things in my sort of short-term memory of what's important. But the AI tools that I use are not so much for project management as all pieces of projects. So I'll maybe just share a few things that I typically do. I have recently, as is said in the business, I've been Claude pilled, meaning I have been convinced that Claude is actually not quite God, but somewhat omniscient and capable of helping in just extraordinary ways. And really more and more in the last few months. About once a week, I have one of those moments of, oh my goodness, this is life-changing that this tool can do this for me. So right now I'm working on a proposal. I write everything from scratch, but I will then upload what I've written at various stages and say, like, review this for me. Where am I weak? What am I missing? What are resources that are out there that I'm not paying attention to, right? Give me a short list. And I should spend more time on this, but you can create sort of a meta set of instructions for these tools that say, no matter what I tell you, this is what I mean. Right? When I say short, I mean I want 6 bullet points, or when I say, those sorts of things. And so it becomes more useful over time as I sort of give it those hints on how to help me. I now find myself, I think this saves me time. I'm not 100% sure. If I write a sentence and I'm just not quite sure that it's the right sentence, I'll just stick the sentence. Like, this is a sentence in my proposal that I just wrote. Could I do better? Does this seem true? Critique me. I never do this in ChatGPT because it always says, oh, you're such a genius. It's not helpful. But in Claude and Gemini and some of the other AI tools, actually, it can provide really good feedback. One of the ways this helps me is that I tend to work best when I have people to bounce ideas off of, but I'm also an introvert, and bouncing ideas off of people is exhausting. And so it's a way to get a little bit of feedback and sort of ask, some tool to help push me in a different direction, without putting in sort of the emotional work of interacting with another human. So I enjoy interacting with other humans, but in small doses. And so this is a way to sort of accelerate that kind of work. Almost any time I feel stuck, I think Myrriah maybe mentioned, what do you do when you get to this point in your calendar and this is the time you're supposed to do deep work and you're not in a deep work mode or mood? I find it really helpful for just to do that little bit of brainstorming that gets me excited about something again. And so the tools are useful for that. Really useful. There's still lots of times where I'm like, oh, I could have used AI to do that. Reformatting things, filling out the endless forms that you fill out for things. Like, sometimes these tools can just, like, here's the form, here's my information, please fill out this form for me. Those are time-saving little tidbits. And I think they are not time saving the first 5 times you do it, but after you get into a routine, they become time saving. I use it for teaching because there's some really creative teaching ideas. Just recently, I was teaching like yesterday or something like that, 2 days ago. I was teaching a class on self-reference and consciousness and what this has to say about AI. And AI had great student examples. I actually knew I was really tired. It was an hour before class. I was like, I don't want to do a lecture for most of class. I need a half-hour activity. It produced a fantastic half-hour. It's like, here's what I'm talking about. Give me an activity. It's a fantastic half-hour activity. The students loved it. And I actually got a little bit of breathing room in class while my students were doing their activity. So those are sort of just a list of things that are helpful. The thing that it's never as much of a time saver as you think, because you've always got to, check what it says. And that can be quite time consuming, but somehow I do now think it saves me time and increases my energy for certain things by just being that kind of sounding board that I need for many different parts of projects.
Thank you. Myrriah.
So I'm pretty low tech in terms of tools that I use. I do use multiple calendars that I can see simultaneously, just so that I, have in mind this is for one part of my life and this is for another part of my life. And they're all together, but they're different. It's part of how I compartmentalize. Probably in terms of just like keeping myself organized with projects and this in my administrative work, I'm really dependent on OneNote, the software, and I just really like the way it compartmentalizes different sections of your life or your work into notebooks. And then also within each one of those, you can keep running track of projects or meetings under the pages there. So that I'm pretty dependent. Like if I ever lost my OneNote, I literally would not know what to do for the next minute of my life, because I just put everything in there. In terms of writing, I've used Scrivener as my primary organizer because it also has a nice way of compartmentalizing what you're writing as part of a bigger thing and moving things around. And I did once do a little workshop on Scrivener. It was like a sales pitch almost. Never got any benefit out of that, but did that for advance because that was really the most important tool I used while writing my book. I have 3 lists at all times. And this might sound like a lot, but let me make a pitch for this. So I have a list of everything that ever has to be done in the known future, no matter how far it is into the future, is on my list. And then I also will take from that every week, this is what has to get done this week. And just kind of so I can see the categories of everything that has to happen. But I make a list for every single day. Usually I do it at the end of the prior day. But if I wake up and I hadn't done it yet, I'd do it first thing in the morning. And it's just hour by hour. I'm looking at my calendar, I'm looking at my list, what's going to happen. And then I can just go through. I do delete everything off my list. Now I hear you say, Melanie, you keep a list of everything done. I'm inspired by that, but it's also very enjoyable to delete these things from my list. And here's the great thing about having 3 lists. You get to delete it 3 times. You've deleted off that day, that week, and off the big forever list. So that's, I like to compete with myself and see if I can actually get everything done in a day that I thought I could get done. And I've gotten better, over time at predicting what I'm going to actually complete. But it's still a rare day when every single thing gets checked off the list. So it feels like a huge accomplishment to me. And I, give myself a high five and pat on the back if I ever do that. Actually, I call my friends and tell them how wonderful I am because I did everything in one day. But part of it is just saying what has to get done, what are the deep work things that I really need to get done. And then what are all these like little things? And some of those, it would be great to get them done this week, but they also could go to next week. So I'm always like keeping mental track of that without, I mean, I'm recording it all in OneNote, but I'm not like using a tool to do that work for me. I'm not using AI at all, I think, because I'm scared of the time investment required to just like learn it and get good at it. And I feel like I have a system that works okay. And I'm sure at some point I'm gonna be forced to, maybe I'll just retire when that happens. But at this point, I'm not using AI or not even investigating it too much. I'm thinking a little bit about how we might use it in the office to automate some of the tasks we do. But I don't see myself anytime soon starting to use it for my personal time management.
Thank you. I will note Hannah is putting in the chat links to specific things people mention. And I was Myrriah's
Nice.
Scrivener webinar is on our writing resources page in addition to our YouTube channel. And yeah, it's got a ton of views. And we will when we post this recording, we'll also post links to anything that comes up that can be linked to. So we've talked a little bit about planning and time management, but let's get to the sticky part of how do you respond to requests for meetings? And how do you decide what should be a meeting or an email or a phone call? How do you think about recurring meetings? What do you do to make meetings efficient? And we're going to start with Tom.
Great. A few points came up in that last conversation. Melanie pointed out that she's an introvert, and I think most of us in academia have some level of introversion. We also are our own bosses generally. I mean, we don't have a lot of people telling us what to do every day. And so you have to be very self-directed and sort of self-focused. But things at the university happen by consensus, right? So getting together with people when it makes sense is a really important part of what we do, because, we as a community have to kind of move things forward. And so these are the tensions that sort of, I think, self-interest versus public interest that sort of drive the feeling you might get when you get a meeting request. You may get a little bit panicky because you're thinking, oh no, how am I going to do this in the course of my day? So I've been on both ends of this. And since we have these automated calendars, you see meetings start to show up on your calendar sometimes if you haven't blocked out the time and these kinds of things. And it can be a little bit overwhelming. But I'm also now a guy who initiates a lot of meetings. And so, and usually these are project focused and problem focused. So I really, if I convene a meeting, I really want to have some objective in mind, an objective where I get the right people in the room that can help move the objective forward. So I think the elements of a really good meeting are ones where you have clear objective, you've got a clear agenda, and all the participants in the meeting have some contribution to make to what the outcome of the meeting is. And so you have to have space for that, and you have to have the ability to kind of open that up. And when I see a meeting request, those are the criteria that I evaluate the request on. So, if I feel like if my presence at the meeting really isn't going to help move the issue forward, I may back out. Normally speaking, I'll accept most meetings. There's sort of these spheres of acceptance, like my students and my close colleagues and things that we're dealing with, like that need to be addressed like right away. Those are I almost always accept those meetings. And then there's shells as you kind of go out to less, kind of focused and less, directly related to the things you're doing. However, you come up on times where, there's just no way you're booked already for a couple of meetings and somebody's requesting another one. And you have to say, look, there's just no way. And then you try to kind of triage it. I think I've heard Myrriah talk about triaging, and Melanie certainly too, Myrriah too. It's really important to kind of consider, given your criteria, what you think the potential outcomes of that meeting might be. So I think meetings that are results focused and outcomes focused are really critical. I really prefer in-person meetings. I mean, we're on Zoom now, and it really does allow for people, broadly to kind of join something that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do. But there's just a lot for me about this sort of interpersonal connection. I mean, I really get more energy and I kind of break out of that introversion thing when I'm able to sort of get more, kind of feedback, not only verbal feedback, but nonverbal feedback from people. And then when I can receive people's ideas and I can kind of see where they're coming from, in a multimodal way. So, there was a lot rolled in there, but it's really, efficiency and object and purpose is absolutely key for me. And I think as you think about, what are my deep priorities? So Myrriah's got the deep list, right? I mean, these are like your fundamental priorities. These are the things that get you up and made you want to take this job. And you really want to kind of align the things you do as much as possible with those kinds of things. Sometimes it falls out of that realm, but nevertheless, lots of the meetings you have align with things you're really interested in. And those are things I think that are important to keep in mind. Finally, keep your heart open to meetings, because sometimes surprising things happen, or you meet people that just all of a sudden kind of change your view on things. I mean, it's really amazing. And we have wonderful colleagues here. We have really smart people at UNM that are just a joy to hang out with. And so, there is a part of this that's a little bit, that you want to kind of keep your options and your heart open to. So, it's a tricky balance. All this stuff's a tricky balance. And, but I think there are ways that you can kind of evaluate how a meeting should go, whether it should be a phone call, whether it should be, put off for another time, or whether it's got to happen right now. And how much is this sort of advancing your personal interests plus the interests that you have in the sphere that you've kind of accepted. So that's my thoughts on this.
Thanks, Myrriah.
Yeah, when it comes to meetings, I mean, I think just to reiterate something Tom said, I very much would prefer to meet in person as well. And that said, I sort of have a set of meeting rules that I try to follow as best as possible. One of those is the fact that I try not to schedule meetings the same week, because I think that disturbing like a calendar in the middle of it just throws everything off for me in particular. Because I know what I'm supposed to get done, and then throwing a meeting in there just is the wrench. And there are times, especially with time sensitive things, that you do have to triage and you do have to call sort of a really important schedule a really important meeting in there. But I try, once my meeting agenda or my schedule is set for the week, I try not to alter that. I also know that if I get a meeting request before a certain time of day that I get to campus, those are requests that I typically deny or ask or suggest a different time, because I drop my kids off at daycare and at school in the morning. I have a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old, almost 6-year-old now. So that is another one of my hard rules in terms of scheduling meetings and when to schedule them. I also try to leave like 5 minutes in between meetings. This is something I think a lot of us have had to learn the hard way. Like, I am really guilty of scheduling things back to back to back to back to back. And in semesters where I have really teaching heavy semesters, like let's say I have my 2 classes and then my Malin Mays seminar and like 2 independent studies, which sometimes is my semester. All my meeting time is students. And right now, as interim director, like that has shifted a lot. And there are times where I have to sort of cancel on students, and that feels really awful. And so I'm trying to learn how to balance sort of those admin responsibilities of needing these immediate meetings, and then like how to especially with students or community partners, because a lot of my work is off campus. A lot of my research requires me to be meeting often with people across not just Albuquerque, but a lot in northern New Mexico. And so then I'm having to block off like full days for one meeting in Santa Fe or something like that. So I often try to do phone call meetings instead of Zoom meetings. And I know, it's not the greatest thing to be talking on the phone, but this is where you can have, your speakerphone on and sort of at least be safely doing those 2 things at once. I think agendas are pretty important too when it comes to meeting. Like, what are we meeting about? Is there something really specific? I appreciate getting a pretty clear agenda when I'm attending a meeting. Like, we see this on our regular faculty meetings or committee meetings. But knowing how much time or where you can sort of slip in and out if you really need to be at in two places or two meetings at once, I think an agenda can come in handy. And then when you have sort of brainstorming sessions or meetings where people are saying, I'll be responsible for this, that, and the other, I think sending follow-up emails is really important. And I'm often the person sending follow-up emails, but I also appreciate getting those follow-up emails. I think this is probably a good place to say that I am also very responsive to emails. And when I say responsive, I am not the person who checks emails twice a day, which could be good and bad, because you know that if I'm not responding to your email within like the next 30 minutes that you send it, like I'm probably gonna lose it basically, right? And I'm not saying that all of us, it's not necessarily a good thing to be that responsive to emails. But for me, like I lose track of them very easily. And so these are things that go in my like master list, like Myrriah said, and I keep that list on my phone notes. I do like instead of deleting, I just use the strike through feature on mine, and then at the end of the semester, I delete or something. But I keep, like Myrriah said, I keep multiple lists in my notes for per semester. So it might be grants applied for or talks I'm giving, and it's a little bit different than like CV, like adding things to your CV. I do have a colleague who told me that one of their practices, which I love and I've never been able to institute, is that like every Friday afternoon they have a meeting with themselves to update their CV. And it's sort of a way for them to think about what they did in the week. And for whatever reason, I can't seem to do that meeting with myself, but it's on my list to do. But I do keep it on my phone, and so it's really easy to go back and add things later.
Thank you. I do want to note there is one commonality. There's several, but one I want to note is everyone is continually reevaluating how they do this, and both in terms of how they make decisions and how they manage all of it. And so it's a lifelong process, which is certainly my experience. So how do you respond to requests for contributions to projects? And we'll start with Myrriah.
Yeah, so this has changed a little for me over the years, but if someone asks me to help with a scholarly project or with an administrative project, I have a few rules that I use because these are going to come and you want to be able to handle them effectively. So right now I'm using like a 24-hour rule. I can't say yes to anything without waiting 24 hours. I mean, I always say thank you for thinking of me, but then I have to like implement my rule. When I was department chair, so that was 5 years when I was still an associate professor, I really needed to get scholarship done because I was still working toward promotion to professor. But I was also really just like drowning in the kind of the rain that falls on you of just like stuff happening all the time. It's such a wide range of things that you're asked to deal with, and it's unpredictable. And I was like, there's no way. I'm just like really I also had younger kids at the time, wasn't getting as much sleep, et cetera, which makes it harder to deal with that, as Myrriah surely knows. So I actually had a rule during that time that if somebody asked me to collaborate on a scholarly project, I had to say yes. And I just was like, this is the only way I'm going to get scholarship done. I'm not going to do my own stuff because my own stuff goes straight to the bottom of the list. And I can't show up for myself when I'm like this. But, I've played team sports my whole life. And I'm like, if my teammate needs me to do something, I will show up every single time. So if someone asked me to do something and it was a scholarly thing, that was the rule, say yes, and then figure it out later. And so I did get publications out of that, and I wasn't able to like return to working on my own big project, my book project, until I was done with being chair 5 years later. right now I'm more in a mode of like, the rule is this something that only I can do? And if it's not something that only I can do, I don't say yes, like someone else should do it because I'm not the only one. If it's something that only I can do, I then have to, ask what's the commitment required from me? And can I actually do that? So like right now, I'm still advising students, and in my department, I've had students reaching out to me asking me to be a committee member. And that's actually it's actually hard for me to say yes to that right now because I'm like, I don't know that I can bring enough to the table to do well with this. And so, can somebody else do it? If there's like no one else in the department who could fill the role for this student's committee, maybe I'll feel like I have to say yes. But right now, I'm kind of looking around like I see colleagues who could do this. And that's probably going to be better for the student than me not really being present to do it. And the other thing I ask myself is essentially, and this is the most important thing I've learned about saying no over many years of failing at saying no. I finally learned to just ask myself, what are you not going to do in order to do this? And if the thing I'm not going to do is sleep, I can't do it. I could do that when I was younger, and I cannot do that anymore. So if it's something that's going to push me past my limits, the thing that I'm going to have to not do, then it's a lot easier for me to say no. I do have a no button. Does anyone else have one of these? So I've trained my students to use this. So if like the thing I'm not going to be able to do is sleep. No, no, no. It has other versions of no. If the thing I'm not going to be able to do is something I value more as a scholar. For the last time, no. So I've trained myself to just get better at that and saying, like, this sounds really cool. I also, at this point in my career, have connections to more resources. And so I always offer all the resources that I have, or like, let me put you in touch with this person, or here's a great person who might be able to do this in my place. Because I've always thought through that. Is there someone else who could do this? So I think it's different for everyone and it's different at different stages of career, but having a set of rules that you've thought out in advance so that you're not in a point of just being like, oh, I'm going to feel so guilty if I say no to this person. You just have to like have your personal policy. And I like to use that language. I like to say I have a personal policy that I wait 24 hours before saying yes to anything. And I'm just transparent about it. And, the person wouldn't have asked you if they didn't really want you to do it. So it's not going to feel great to hear a no. But I think there's nice ways to do that and supportive ways to do that.
Thanks. Melanie.
All right. So I'll tell you first my aspiration, my strong intent for how I decide whether to take on projects is just two things. I will take it on if I'm genuinely super excited about it, or if I'm genuinely wanting to work with the person who asked, even if I'm not necessarily super excited about the project, but I know when I work with this person, good things will happen, or, this person has helped me, this is sort of reciprocating, like those sorts of things. And ideally it's both, right? When something new comes, and I'm trying to move myself toward maybe it's only both. Like if it's not both of those things, forget it. In reality, of course, things kind of creep over that. And Myrriah's example of, students who are asking for you to be on their committee. I've gotten much better at saying no when it's just not the right fit. That's almost an easy no. When I am the right fit, like I could genuinely help this person, but I don't have time to help them well, that's trickier. And I find it really hard to sort of, I do go through the exercise of, do I really have time to do this? Like, how am I going to add this to my plate? And sometimes that helps me to say no. I have had various nobodies over the years. Julia was a nobody at some point. Not a nobody, but a no buddy, to help me
Still am.
remind me to say no. And I asked Claude, in fact, I asked Claude again, would you like a warm decline with leaving the door open, a clean no hedging no, or a decline with a suggested alternative? And right, so you don't even have to come up with the words yourself. I actually really sometimes resent when I'm asked to come up with the alternative. Like, I don't have time. That's why I told you no. And with reviewer requests, I know the journals and the editors are under a lot of stress, but when it's like, can you come up with somebody else? Like, I don't want to be responsible for somebody else having to say no. So I now, if there's a very clear, yeah, my grad student could do this. I have a colleague who actually would enjoy reviewing this. I'll suggest an alternative, but I've gotten better and better at, I think, for the things that when I know the answer is no, I just say no, sorry, can't. Like, really short and to the point. I think I'll give an example of saying yes to something that I didn't have time to do, which is this week, as Hannah's know, there have been these Genesis proposals. It's the Department of Energy that is trying to use a proposal mechanism to kill us all. And it's just been a really difficult, stressful, short timeline thing. But I've had in the sort of back of my mind, moving toward the foreground of my mind, that I really want to work on an initiative that I'm calling Compute Where the Sun Shines, which is coming up with real infrastructure that makes running data centers on solar power possible and using data centers to drive the adoption of solar energy. And there was sort of a perfect piece of this call to address a part of that challenge. And so despite the fact that I was like close to tears some days right before I agreed to do this because I didn't have enough time, I was like, well, this is what I said I wanted to do. And so I'm going to make the time to do it. And it meant I ditched some other things. And right now I'm on a mild panic and I'm wondering if that was the right choice, but I think that's the right choice for me, right? That I just have to decide to go all in on the things that are like the intellectually exciting things that I want to do. Tom mentioned, right, we have this incredible luxury as faculty, maybe not as administrators, but as faculty, of not having bosses. And I feel like we don't take nearly enough advantage of that because we sort of allow other things to take the place of, the boss that would tell you what to do. And one of those things is email. And so for those of you who answer email right away, I'm super impressed. I kind of look at email as other people's to-do lists that show up in front of me. And it's like, well, I'd like to help you with your to-do list, but I've got my own. I'm terrible with email. I was a computer science major in the 80s, so I've had email a really long time. I'm kind of over it. I try to respond again to things I really care about and people I really care about, and other things, you said if I don't respond right away, I drop the ball. Yeah, I just drop the ball. Like I don't even, and I'm sorry, it's rude. Like but I just can't even take the mental energy sometimes to figure out how do I send a no. And it's not that I intentionally don't, it's just, it falls off the list. And I just want to say to all the people here who I think are wonderful people and I intend to reply to your emails, also things that I intend to respond to fall off the list all the time. So I'm sorry. But I do feel like, I've had days where I'm like, all I'm going to do, I'm going to clear my inbox of all the emails that came in today. And that is absolutely the only thing I can do in that day. And I think there are people who can be more efficient and they can answer all their emails in 3 hours rather than 10. But like, for me, I'm pretty sure if I just answered emails in the way that I think I need to answer them, it would just take all day. So I've just completely given up on that. Because it is not, email is not a project I have decided I want to contribute to. And it's taking away from the things that I think are important. So everyone who knows me, just send me another email if it's important. Anna's laughing for good reason. So I do think that there was one other thing that someone said. I just wanted to, sorry, I took a note and I wanted to just reply. It's a little off topic from this question, but can I find that place? The meeting with myself at the end of the week. A lot of things that people have suggested are things that I have tried and not really stuck with. I've sort of tried a version of that, but I'm going to try again with the meeting with myself at the end of the week. The amount of time I spend putting together I usually try to do it at annual review time, putting together, updating my CV. And I'm sure I missed 3/4 of the things that I should have put on my CV. I am again going to get Claude to like crawl through my calendar and find stuff for me. But I feel like a weekly check-in like that is really good, both for keeping my CV updated, but also for keeping that meeting is, did you do the things you were supposed to do? Like the things you said you cared about, did you actually manage to prioritize them? And if not, what are you going to change next week so you prioritize them? So I'm swearing to you all that I'm going to do that. Today is the end of the week. I'm going to do that at the end of today.
All right, thanks. So when you do have protected time that you've blocked off, how do you choose what to focus on? I frequently get overwhelmed at that point. And how do you get started, especially if you have something larger you need to work on, or it's really amorphous, like a big writing project? And we'll start with Tom.
Okay, so this is a toughie. These are all tough questions, but so when I first started in administration, I took a job that was one of those jobs where it never goes away. You just always are getting some sort of something happening. And I talked to a colleague of mine. This was the chair of the economics department at the time, Bob Behrens, who was extremely productive. But this guy was doing stuff like crazy, like I mean, just connected to every piece of the university at that time. And I said, Bob, how do you do it? He's like, I write in 15-minute chunks. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah. And he says, I'll just kind of get in there and I'll just kind of write, whatever I've got I'm working on right now, I'll get in there and write for time that, I have to myself. I think that works sometimes. For me, it doesn't work. I had a really tough writing project that I was doing. And what I really was able to capitalize on is sort of the ebb and flow of the academic life, right? I mean, there are times when it is impossible to set back time to do anything. Like right now, this time of the semester, everybody's freaked out. We're all trying to get everything wrapped up. And it is impossible to sit down for more than an hour or two, unless you get up at, 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever, to really kind of dig deep into something. And this project really required me to dig deep. So, I noticed that there were some spots in my calendar where I could just say, all right, I'm out of the office and I'm going to get in there and I'm going to tackle this. There are things that are easier for me to write. Like I've been studying certain things for years. And so I have a really good sort of internal rapport and I kind of get it. And then the other thing is I've always been in research administration, which is a super time sensitive, always like there's a deadline. You've always got to do something like now. It's got to happen. Deadlines are really effective for me. There's a couple of people on this call that we were working on a project and putting a proposal together. And it was just like one of these things where like, it's virtually certain this is not going to get funded, but we're going to go for it anyway. And we kind of convened it and made it happen. And some of the folks in the Frodo were helping us to get it together. And it really came together and just kind of happened. So, I mean, I think it depends on exactly what the project is, how deep you got to dig, take advantage of sort of the normal, cycles of work in academia. And if you haven't quite figured that out yet, you will. It takes maybe a year or two. But and then if you got it in you, sit down and write for 15-minute chunks. I think Bob Behrens probably got a lot of peace out of this, just to sit down and just look at something when he was actually, that he didn't have to like put it out there for something else. So that's what I got for you.
Melanie. You need to unmute, Melanie. Welcome to Friday.
I wonder how much time I would have back if I didn't need to unmute. Let's see. I'm trying to decide what to add to Tom's question. Will you repeat the question again? I feel like I was about to say something not relevant.
When you do have protected time, how do you choose what to focus on and how do you get started? You've already answered a piece of it
Yeah.
with Claude, but how do you choose among your projects how to spend the protected time?
So, I actually, okay, the how I choose is simple. The how I choose is I work on the thing that I am most excited about in the moment first in those deep times. That is different than the I have protected time and there's a deadline. So it's that's sort of taking the protected time out of protected time. And so I deal with the fire, right? And so a lot of the times it's just putting out fires. So if there's a deadline, I just got to do this thing. But when there's actual protected time, I do try to do the blue sky thinking and writing and reading paper, like the luxury of sitting down and deeply reading a paper on whatever it is that's the thing that's like right now, this is the big idea that I'm working on. And I do it to my own detriment, probably at the expense of I have a paper that doesn't have an absolute hard deadline and I should probably finish it. But the thing I'm really excited about right now, like that I think is my next big thing, is X. And so that's what I'm going to spend this time on. For me, that time is almost always only workable early in the wee hours of the morning. So it's very much dependent on how I'm sleeping. I don't sleep that much. So sometimes the wee hours of the morning is I wake up at 2 a.m. and it's like, well, I could sit here and be really mad about being awake, or I could work on my really exciting idea. And so that's usually where I get my best working on my really exciting idea time. And then after I've done that, I feel a sense of accomplishment, and maybe it's 5 a.m., but I can get a couple more hours of sleep. So whatever, I think it's important to kind of work that into your rhythms, whatever they are. But yeah, to me, that's again, like that's the point of having this job as opposed to some other job, is that we get to work on exciting projects and ideas. And so that protected time is rare, but just keeps me going through the rest of it if I just focus on those things.
Thanks. So let's address a different part of some of this. How do you manage frustrations or setbacks? And this next question has already been addressed a little bit. Have you ever decided to overhaul how you're doing something to make it work better for you? And Myrriah.
Yeah, I think I'll start by saying like I tend to lose interest, not fully lose interest in things, but when a shiny new object comes along and picks my attention, like I will run in that direction. And that is just the way my ADHD brain works, but literally ADHD brain. But I think that it depends on what the setback is in terms of how I respond. First of all, I have gotten better at removing myself from projects or situations that aren't working, whether it's a student's committee and I'm not bringing anything solid to it, or it's a research project that it's just not going to happen. Like I have gotten better at removing myself with apologies. This semester, I'll give one really specific example. So I was supposed to I had a grant that I used to buy a course buyout to get a very specific research project done. And that was set up since almost a year ago. And then in October, I became interim director of the research center. And then my sort of course buyout this semester has sort of gone out the window, and I've had to really pivot with that project because there's deadlines and all kinds of things tied to that. And I'm giving like a big research talk next week, and it was like I don't have all the research done that I had wanted to have done for it. And so I think learning how to just like give yourself grace as scholars, like for most of us, none of the work that we do is going to change the world that day that we're doing it. And, that is a benefit of what we do because we can push it off another day or until we figure out how to deal with the setback or the frustration. But I think that the other thing that has been coming up a lot is when when grant opportunities come along and I have this great project idea that has been sitting there for 5 years or whatever, and it fits perfectly with this grant opportunity. And now I'm pushing forward this other idea when my other book needs to get finished. And I see those sort of as setbacks too. But I know because this is what happened when I was writing my last book, I had a bunch of stuff that I was working on simultaneously. And I was just simultaneously working on everything, dealing with whatever setbacks um, came my way, and then everything kind of came out at the same time. And so I'm sort of treating all of my projects that way right now, that maybe these are small or short-term setbacks in terms of what I wanted to get done by the end of the semester or whatever. But it'll all come along as long as I don't totally lose interest or totally stop working on it. And I think that we learned a lot during like the COVID lockdown period. You know, I had a kid in May of 2020 and I was finishing my book in that year, and you know, you sort of have to find places that are going to support you. Advance has been one of those places. I think those of you who are trying to find time to write, like look for writing groups. NCFDD is a great resource. Look for writing groups. DISA has a writing group. Advance is doing writing retreats. The advanced writing retreat, just being there in community writing with people, is what got me over my mental roadblock to get the last chapter of my book done. So I think part of it is knowing where to, like, asking for help, and not maybe even not knowing where to ask for help, but just starting to ask different people what they do, kind of like what we're doing here. But people might know other resources that you've never heard of. And Frodo has been super, super helpful for me, Hannah, and all the staff at Frodo, because sometimes I don't know how to work through something, or I've never had to. And I think it's just that asking for help. So I've learned that when I hit those setbacks, that it can be less frustrating if I ask for help.
That is great. There are so many things you and we do not have to solve by ourselves. Tom.
I think I forgot I was on this one.
Think quick, Tom.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, this is a constant battle, right? I mean, you are constantly rethinking things, and and the different roles that you take on. I mean, you will. I mean, it sounds like everybody here has got various roles and various hats that they play, and those are going to kind of push you in different directions, and you're going to kind of pull them in different directions as well. Frustrations, you know, I don't know. I used to get really frustrated and really upset about stuff. I'm a lot calmer. I just realized, things are gonna be okay, right? I mean, Melanie was saying, "Hey, I'm not gonna. There's gonna be emails I just don't respond to. That's okay, I mean, there is a bit of that. So I don't know. I mean, I guess as things have gone on for me, I've gotten a lot less irritated about stuff and a lot more about thinking about long term. What's this ultimately going to play out? How's this going to work? How are we going to make this place better together? If this isn't doing that, then I'm not going to be a part of it. So I guess that's not too good, but whatever.
Fair. So we're going to close out the official panel section by asking everyone, if faculty tried just one small thing next week to protect their time, what would you recommend? And Myrriah, is it okay to start with you?
Yeah, sure. I would say when you make your list, assuming you make a list, compartmentalize it into like the big things that are really going to take my attention and like the little things that are just responding to other people's to-do lists, now that I have that from Melanie as a way to think of things. And then just like slot those into your calendar accordingly. So just to do the compartmentalization that makes you more efficient, so that whatever time you have, you're using it in an efficient way. That'd be my one thing to change.
Melanie.
I'm going to go with the no button. If you're not super enthusiastic that this is a thing you should, or super obligated that this is a thing you should say yes to, then figure out how to say no real fast. So the no button, the no buddy, the no AI, the no whatever it is, the post-it note on your wall, whatever it is, to just quickly remember, just say no to things you can't do.
I'll just toss out a piece of that can be easier, is never agree to things or feel like you have to respond to things in the hallway. Always say, can you send that to me in email? And then you can say no by email.
Good.
You have time to figure out how to do it constructively. Myrriah.
For me, it's weekly planning, whether you do it Friday afternoon or Monday morning, if you do some sort of weekly planning, and then And then you have a built-in no, because then it's not on your agenda, so it's an automatic. Can be an automatic no.
Tom,
I'm gonna triple down on some of the things I heard. Just don't say yes to anything next week. Just nothing new. I mean, this is going to be the busiest week of the semester for you, so do not accept anything new.
and then report back if that worked. Okay, we will, so thank you all. I think this has been a really helpful discussion, and I'd like to open it up for questions. Feel free to speak up. Sarah.
I know this is, thank you all for this, really, really helpful. I know this is outside of the reclaiming our research time, but since our lives are holistic, I wonder how people do things that are other self-care things like go to the gym, which I typically do during what we might consider the workday, but then it's gonna, it's sometimes in my life, like coming up soon, it's gonna have to get shifted out. So I wonder how people do that kind of stuff.
Sarah, I tell you this, I take time to go to the gym every day. And when I was a dean, I did it. And, I mean, I just made it. If there was a place where I could get it, I would do it because I will tell you, you're so much more productive when you have a time to kind of just do something with your body or just kind of let your mind kind of forget things for a minute and just kind of be. It's so important. So I just carve out the time and do it. And I think that's something you must do.
I was actually thinking about how I've run into you on the way to the gym.
I find that,
Myrriah, are you gonna go?
oh, sorry. You go
Who's
first,
up?
Myrriah.
Okay, mine's just really brief. I mean, I commented earlier that I just always show up for other people in a way that I don't show up for myself. So I try to build that in. Anything that's something I need to do for my kids, I just commit to it and I know I'm going to show up for my kids. And if it's something I need to do for myself, I like to organize people to do athletic events together because then it helps me show up and do it and keep my fitness in terms of doing training. So just finding ways, kind of the same techniques to commit to things that actually matter to me and create the structures that make that happen.
Myrriah, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I right now I go really early, but one of the things that's helped me to recommit again is like I had to sign up for a marathon so that I held myself accountable to getting out the door. So for me, it's first light before my partner leaves to work, and so right now it's 6:15, I'm out the door.
Melanie.
I'll say the best time I've found to go to the gym. I hate going to the gym. I don't really do it very much, but the one thing that worked was going to the gym after teaching. So finish class, I'm kind of useless anyway for an hour after I teach my brain. And so it's a really good time if you can block that out on your calendar. I managed to do that one semester. I do have kind of a trade-off between am I going to exercise first thing in the morning or think first thing in the morning? But in some ways I'm like, well, whichever one I do. If I can't think, okay, I can exercise. If I don't feel like exercise, it's like, okay, well then you should think big thoughts. And so I give myself the way to get out of the other one. That's the thing I still need to do.
And Hannah has noted that, everyone should know that UNM insurance covers massage and acupuncture, and there's a link there. And Myrriah's added personal training at Johnson. So this goes back to being aware of resources that might be helpful. Other questions? Please. Marissa.
I'll ask the question. So I'm just kind of curious how everyone responds to manuscript review requests or NSF panel requests, because I find this very challenging because it's something that you haven't planned for and then it comes up and maybe it's a paper you're interested in and you really want to do it. Or a panel, it seems like we should do it. but it's a big time commitment. So curious for advice.
Yeah, I'm definitely not I'm clearly the person on the panel here who still has a major difficulty saying no. I have recently realized that I need to just start saying no to every manuscript review right now. Just automatic no. I took one on and it's overdue now, and it has just become the thing on my list that I can't cross off until I actually sit down and do it. So that is my only automatic no, I think right now. I just don't have time. It's gonna replace my research, and that's why am I doing somebody else's research and not investing in my own?
Marissa, I would say that that there is a little bit of triage here. I mean, NSF, the culture there has changed dramatically over the last couple of years. But I will tell you that early on in my career, serving on a panel was probably one of the most important things I did. Just because I was able to kind of see the landscape of what was happening in the field, and also just we used to be able to go to NSF and like get together with people and talk to them and just go out to dinner and talk about what you were doing. And I mean, that was a really important thing, even though it would kill me because you have to like take that time out to like do it. So I'm with Myrriah. I'm saying no to manuscript reviews right now. I'm kind of blocking some time because I know I have a project that got to get done and I'm going to have to do it. So part of the prioritization thing. But I hear you. It's a constant struggle. But I would advise you at some point to do a NSF panel if you haven't done one.
I'll say I use my rule that I said earlier, like, am I the only one who can do this? And if it's something that's like so in my field, and I really am one of the 3 experts who could review this, I'll say yes. And I won't feel good about it because I know the strain it's going to put on me and like the way it's going to like impact other things. But yeah, I need to do it because I'm the only one who can do it. I do feel like it's kind of a privileged position at this point in my career to take the stance of like, I'm only doing it if I'm one of 3 people who can do it versus I think earlier in your career, there's so much learning that happens in that process that it is worth investing time in it, like Tom was saying. But if you have your no rules set up, I think you can just apply the rules to that like you would to anything else. What am I going to have to put down to do this? And am I willing to put that thing down?
Cool, thank you.
I chime in on this one just because it's such a time suck, just even saying no. I feel like I say no about once a day to a review request at this point, which makes it really easy to do because if I say yes to all of those, like it would literally be my entire job. So, and I feel particularly bad about not reviewing papers because I know the stress the editors are under because nobody has time to review papers and the reviewing system is inundated somewhat with AI things and just like this, it feels like, but I've gotten to the point where I'm like, the system is broken and I can't fix it. So I'm just not gonna spend time worrying about that. Kind of am right now, but, and those are ones where I try to shoot off a quick no, like even if I'm doing the bad thing of waking up early in the morning and checking my email on my phone and I see a review request and I just do the automatic no, sorry, can't do it.
Hey, Myrriah, where did you get that no button?
I ordered it online and it's www.thenobutton.com. I like buy these in batches of 10 and give them to my people. So surprised I haven't already given you one time.
That may be the best tip yet.
You guys want to hear another one just to be inspired? No. There you go.
How many different no's are there?
There are 8 different no's. It's
Wow.
excellent. Yeah.
That's good. So then if you have to say no to the same person, you can do it different ways.
Exactly.
Can I chime in with, sorry, yet another AI related thing?
Please.
As I said, it's my whole life. once my kid's gone and now my kid's gone off, now I like to spend all my time with AI. One thing that I've noticed that I kind of fear for the rest of the world is that these AI coding agents really have taken over. Like, good software engineers don't write code anymore, right? They have AI do it for them. And it would seem that that used to be 50, 60, 70, 80% of their time. It would seem that they would now have more time and be less stressed. And it is absolutely definitely the opposite of that. And I think that is true for a lot of these AI tools, that they do help you get certain things done, but the pressure to keep up with how to use these tools to get things done faster, and then the expectation that you do everything faster, is almost immediate. So there's a huge amount of burnout by these software engineers who used to be working 60-hour weeks and kind of drowning. And now they're working 80-hour weeks because they're like, if I don't understand how the next version of this software works, I'm going to lose 20% of my productivity. And so I've got to learn this new thing, but the next thing's going to come out next week. And so then I have to learn this new, and it's really like totally a rat race, right? And everyone's just sort of, it's just making the hamster wheel spin faster. And so I do think people who, everyone should think about, as these so-called productivity tools roll out, like Myrriah's approach of just ignore them and then retire one day might be a good way to do it. But there's a real danger there that it really, I think, is in general making the lack of time problem worse, not better. Even when you're kind of into using the tools and they're interesting and fun and drive your curiosity, they still just manage to take away your time in surprising ways. So it's a fair warning.
I think one overall message here is consciously evaluate or reevaluate how you are spending your time and what approach you're taking to decisions about how you're spending your time. The answers are going to vary, as people have said, across the semester at different stages in your career and based on external forces that are, we're in a time of even more swirl than usual. So it's actually not a luxury to, if not every week, at least a couple of times during the semester, look at what are you doing? Why are you doing it? How are you doing the things you're doing? Because you can sometimes find ways to enjoy what you're doing more and ruthlessly take advantage of the flexibility we have. So I'd like to thank our panelists for some great suggestions and discussions. Thank you all for spending part of Friday with us. We will have this posted by early next week, and we'll also post some of the suggestions and links that came up. If you have ideas about other topics that might be of interest, you can contact me, contact FRDO, and we're always interested in suggestions that can help people navigate faculty careers, particularly in this challenging time. So thank you all very much for joining us.
Thanks, Julia.